I first started offshore, mental health wasn't really regarded as an important subject, nor was it spoken about much either. However, I have noticed 13 years on that the subject is being spoken about and brought to more people's attention. People like Mike Scotland have been a massive part of that, and he's my guest on today's show.
Thanks for inviting me along, Joe. It's much appreciated. It's good to see what you're doing and be involved as much as I can.
No, perfect, especially considering you've got to check in a few hours, so it means that extra minute that you've taken the time out for it.
Yeah, it's real life situations ongoing.
The life of an offshore worker.
Yeah, it's always unsettled. I guess that's the norm, right?
Probably the perfect way to sum it up. And you talk a little bit about who you are. I know why I've asked you to come on, but kind of what your kind of why I've asked you to come on. Well, you'll know why, but and yeah, just crack on.
Okay. Yeah, I think for me, like I always see myself as just Mike the individual. First and foremost. I mean, that's what I live my day-to-day life as, but I guess there's many roles. I'm a father of 3 kids. I'm a partner. But above that, I'm, a mental health ambassador for the oil and gas industry or the energy industry. Same, but different. I'm also, I guess, a community warrior is what people say, an environmental warrior. So I go out litter picking. I run a really successful litter picking group, which basically we run cleanup activities around the world. So basically cleaning up other people's litter or rubbish. But I guess for me, it's a focus on bringing people together. So if it is mental health, it's about speaking up, about people voicing how they're feeling without, I guess, falling victim to, that stigmatization that is so heavy in the industry that I work in. But then combating that with the litter picking is like, it's bringing people together, but actively getting outside, getting outdoors, doing something positive. So yeah, I think that's probably a little bit why you've brought me on. But on top of that, I am a boots on the ground worker in the oil and gas industry. And yeah, as you said, I will be going offshore tomorrow and I'll be fulfilling the role as a safety officer.
So that's perfect. So obviously you're a safety officer at the moment. What does that entail? What's your day-to-day job now?
So I guess when people say the word safety, they're like, oh no, the police, the guy in the clipboard hiding around the corner.
Yeah.
I'd like to think, I like to see my own approach as like the modernized, I'm just one of the guys. That's all I really am, they're out there doing their day-to-day jobs and I'm just there to check in with them more than anything, see how they're doing, seeing what they're up to, and probably having that influential presence of safety, as in I'm just that reminder in the back of their head if they forget, oh, here's the safety guy, I should be doing this. That's all it really is. My day-to-day job is being involved with the pre-tour meetings. So I'm the first voice the guys hear in the morning, whether they like that or not. Before their shift, any single person that comes onto the rig, I'm the first guy that gives them the induction, gives them the quick overview of, the operation and the safety focuses for their day and, their trip or their tour essentially. Whether it's meetings, risk assessments, all the stuff that nobody really wants to do. My weird mind enjoys it. So that's kind of what I do on a day-to-day activities basis offshore.
Yeah, I was just going to say you've got to be a certain individual to enjoy all that. But did you go straight into offshore safety, or were you doing something before then?
No, so my background's, it's really strange actually, because when I was at school, my dream, like a lot of people's, was to play professional football. I was really fortunate to actually do that at a young age. So I actually played, for Aberdeen, represented Scotland from an early age, and then I represented the UK doing a thing called Football de Salio, which brought me on Sky Sports at like 14 years old doing tricks. So I was like a freestyle champion, which was really cool. But the pressure of football got to me. I guess I didn't know till I was a little bit older, but actually my social anxiety took quite a strong battering from being around that sort of environment. So I chose to join the army, of all things, at 16. I'd done a year in the army, but again, I was probably the best fit for the army, but the army wasn't the best fit for me. So I came out of the army a year and went straight into preschool football sports coaching. So like I went from, working with, trained killers essentially to working with 2 to 10-year-olds. So the completely different end of the spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I done that for like six years. Was a personal trainer, worked with football teams, etc. And then I ended up becoming almost too busy that I didn't have a life. And I got in a conversation with somebody that mentioned offshore work. And I thought, you know what, that sounds pretty cool, having time away. But what they didn't tell me was it was an offshore company, but I would never be going offshore. So I took the bait into working at a freight forwarding warehouse, which I'll be honest, I absolutely hated. Hated it. It was honest, I fucking hated it. It was shit. But I thought, like, let's just stick in, see where it goes. And cut a long story short, I got a call to go into the office of the company I was working alongside. And I got the opportunity to go offshore as a green hand roustabout. And I'll be honest, right? I know I'm a man and everything, but I'd never even held a spanner before. So I had not got a clue what I was getting myself into. I went offshore the first time like an absolute space cadet thinking like, what the fuck do I do? Like, what is this place? Totally out the norm. And then, but one thing, as soon as I got offshore, I knew that I wanted health and safety. Being in the military, my brain was already conditioned to do what I was told and do it correctly. When I played football, I was the captain of every team except from Aberdeen. I was always the captain. So I was used to, leading by example, doing things correctly. And then training kids, eliminating, bad habits. So already preventing things. So as soon as I started offshore, I'd literally done everything I was told, which you're told just do it safely.
Yeah.
So my brain was basically programmed for that. And then, yeah, that was my kind of path bit going forward was I knew I wanted health and safety. I just didn't know how.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just by speaking to you, you're obviously a lot more excitable than most HSE guys I've come across. And this is the first time I've actually spoken to you, voice-wise. But in terms of when you first started, how far do you think that offshore safety's come?
I think, oh, wow, this is a pivotal question already. But I started offshore in February 2014. And I guess I've quite a lot of different angles here because I've been in the drilling side of the industry. I've been on the production side. I've been on the restoration side. I've been over in Qatar, Holland, Norway. I've been about. So it'd be quite hard to say from the beginning to now. But looking at it as a whole, I would like to think that it's remained top of the list from when I started to now. So I don't think the priority has ever really changed, if I'm honest. Maybe 10 years before I joined the industry, maybe there's a bigger gap. But certainly since I've joined, I see that there's been more focus and views towards the documentation, to be perfectly honest. I think people doing things safely hasn't really changed much. To be honest, I think still during the conversations, there's, you've got the time to do the job. It's recycled wording every year. They don't change really anything, in my opinion. But I think the thing what I would say is, and again, this is my approach, is the view towards doing things safely is changing. So how we actually incorporate people having the conversations beforehand, the emphasis on the toolbox talks or the transition to work meetings, they've got a little bit more of a priority than just, guys, make sure you're doing it safe. Instead of just saying the words, there is a little bit more emphasis on the conversation around it. That's what I would say, but not a massive difference.
Yeah, no, because that's actually quite well. What I was going to say is my next question was how do you deliver safety? Because like you said early on, you're like the police to some people, but in reality, you're there for the good of the individual. But how do you go about delivering safety?
I think removing the word safely, removing the whole word. To be honest, I'm not a safety guy. I'm just here to assist. That's all I am. I'm there just to remind and assist. Because essentially, anybody that comes offshore, they've been asked to fulfill a position because they're known to be able to do it, right? They're capable of being able to do it. And if they're capable of being able to do it, they're capable of doing things in the correct way, which is safely, you know? So when I go out, it's more just being a bit stupid or being a bit silly as if I don't know what's going on. You know, what is it you're actually doing there? Can you show me what it is you're up to just now? Can you tell me what you're going to be doing later on? You know, what is the actual process here? What's the next stages for the operation? I don't get that. So when they're telling me, all I'm doing is I'm getting them to say it out loud and saying, guys, see when you're going to be doing this up on the drill floor, please obey all signs and barriers. Look at your red zone management. I just get them to tell me. So although I'm seen as the safety guy, I'm there just to have the conversations. You know, like for instance, just an example, when an accident and incident happens, one of the things that is most commonly used on the lessons learned is remember and get the guys to focus on. There's always an element of give more focus somewhere, right? Which is great. But how do you increase the focus? How do you get somebody to increase the focus? It doesn't make sense. It's used so flippantly on almost every accident investigation at the end, but nobody tells you how to do it, right? So by engaging focus, it's about conversations. Nobody's going to tell you the conversations to have, but I think being a safety professional, that is the skill set that you must have as an individual to get that message across. You know, so I believe that as a safety officer or HSE advisor, whatever it is, that's what falls under my remit. Part of my day-to-day job, fulfilling the safety criteria, is just switching people's brains on. That's all it is. And me reminding them or me saying something for them to say it back to me, that is how I achieve that focus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's basically almost getting them to tell you what they're doing to make sure they know, well, you know that their head's in the right place, and that ultimately it takes the onus off them thinking that you're there to come over and scrutinize them at the end of the day, is it?
100%. I would rather them say, "Oh, here's that stupid safety boy again," than for me to say, "Why aren't you doing that? You don't have a clue what you're doing. Hi, what did I tell you about that barriers? Why have you not got them up?" It's better for me to say, you know, like, guys, I've just entered this area. Am I meant to be here? I know. Okay, sorry, I didn't see the sign of barrier. Do you know, somebody's more likely to do something if they've said it themselves, right?
Yeah.
So you have to give the ownership onto them. It has to be their idea. You know, and that's one thing that, funnily enough, working with kids at such a young age, that's what that taught me. Because kids don't really want to be told no.
Yeah.
You know, kids don't really like to be told what to do. So by working with kids at all different ages, at all different levels and capabilities, I've never once had a kid not do something that I wanted them to do. But what that's allowed me to do is find about 1 million different ways how to communicate with people to get them to that end goal. And then taking that sort of learning to offshore, it's the same again. And, you know, like, see if you hear like relationships. If a relationship goes bad with a male and female or female, whatever it is, doesn't matter what gender, and you use the word manipulation, it's often seen as something negative, that word manipulation. But as part of my role as a safety officer, manipulation is one of the things that I basically need to do on a daily basis, but in a positive way.
Yeah.
So again, it's all kind of a play on words, but for me, all I'm interested in is getting to that safe outcome, not just to get the job done. That's the operation, guys. I've got a slight care towards it, but to get the job done safely. So they do genuinely go home to their friends and families in the same way they came out, if not better. That's my view. You know, you hear it, we just want you to go home the same way you came out. Sounds good.
Yeah.
But for me, if we can get people offshore and I can speak to them and, you know, kind of touching on that mental health conversations, if they can unload things to me and I can maybe communicate with them to get them to understand what they're going back home to, then for me, they're going to be going home better than they came out. That's my view. Always strive for better every single time.
Yeah, no, and you've actually just touched on a really good aspect there, actually, the mental health, which is something that obviously, you know, probably is your forte in this front, and we'll go into that actually now. The ManUP speak up, where did you come from? Where did that come from? Because for me, I mean, I've been offshore for 13 years now, and I still feel, maybe more in the oil and gas than in renewables, that the mental health aspect is still, there's still a lot of stigma around it. It's still, because the oil industry, this is obviously my opinion, is more a prehistoric industry with the people that are in it, with the ideas that they still use. Mental health isn't really used that wisely in terms of, oh, you're too manly to do it. It's too much of a masculine environment, blah, blah, blah. But obviously what you're doing, you've obviously got, you built a really good platform off the back of it, and you are striving to push it out there. What's your views on the mental health within the oil and gas industry?
It's probably subjective, to be honest. Like anything in life, it's going to be subjective, right? And, you look at the industry, and I had to try and explain this to somebody not so long ago. Certain industries attract certain people with certain mindsets and certain skills, right? Just like every single industry out there, whether it's, an interior designer, they're going to be quite creative, right? Because you need to be creative for that. Yeah. Military, you need to be quite driven, focused on things, certain tasks. You need to be a go-getter, a doer. And when it comes to the oil and gas industry, you kind of take anyone in to a certain extent, right? Oh, yeah. Especially from the drilling industry, you bring anyone in. Okay. It's a little bit different with production, I would imagine, because you have to be slightly more upper skilled, and that's not demoralizing anyone. But
but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to, it could be, a hookup where you've got all sorts of life coming up, and, people that are coming offshore for the first time to fill places, to be laborers, or the drilling industry that, like myself, I worked with kids and then I went offshore. It doesn't actually make sense when you think of it logically. It makes no sense.
No.
Oh, who's that new roustabout that you've got? I worked with kids beforehand.
Is it what? Yeah, that'd be a hell of a discussion,
100%. So, worked with, not touched. But when you look at the dominance, you're in a foundationed environment, right? When you get out offshore, it's always going to be, the survival of the strongest, the most powerful character, because you're in a little fake world. In like any situation in life, whether that's at school or going up at a buffet or something like that, it's going to be the people that are forceful that are going to call the shots. Yeah, with everything. The only thing is, when it comes to the oil and gas industry, it's very hard to make a massive difference on a rig when the management are the forceful ones, and that's where it gets a little bit challenging. You hear people having conversations about certain companies out there. Oh, they're rubbish. Oh, they're nuts. Or, oh, they're crap. It's not necessarily the company. It's just maybe the people that they brought on years ago that have been there for the longest, that have they've been associated with that company.
Yeah.
You give it 10 years, companies completely change sometimes because it's a new lease of life that gets put into it. You could have 20 rigs in one company, 15 of them could be arseholes and 5 are great. It just depends. And even on one rig, could be 2 back-to-back OIMs. One's absolutely brilliant, proactive, does everything, and the other one's an arsehole. So, the oil and gas industry, I just think that because we are out there in the middle of nowhere, less gets seen, less gets spoken about, and you're not really allowed to tell anybody else. So that is the only difference I would say from the oil and gas industry, is there's less eyes on, and then it's like, well, okay, it goes back to the safety record, where in theory, if it went on conversational record, don't really think would be as robust as maybe the other industries out there, because it's not acceptable to call somebody a fucking idiot. You could lose your job for saying stuff like that. But when it comes offshore, it just comes off the tongue. There's a less acceptance for stuff onshore, but when you go offshore, it's, you can put somebody down. So mental health, it's a tough one. It's a tough one because people could just say, I'm just joking, and then it's done.
Yeah. No, I that's probably the best way to sum it up, actually, is it's a fake world, because the reason I started this podcast is because it's exactly that. It's another world. When you pack your bag, you jump on a flight and you get to wherever you're going, or you get onto whatever installation you're going to. That is a totally separate life to the one you live on shore. I mean, you're two. I always say it's like, you're almost two different people. You've got your offshore person, and then you've got who you are when you get back. And when you go offshore, you do become a little bit more, well, you swear like a trooper. Let's be totally honest. That's the first thing that comes, because you don't have to watch your language around who you're at, because you're all speaking on the exact same level. But it's along with that, and like you say, it's the masculinity, of the boys in power, and who the pushovers are, and whatnot. And I think you sum it up really well. It is a very tough one at the moment, mental health offshore. It's I mean, is it there?
Yeah.
I mean, it's coming in more and more. I definitely will say that. I have worked with boys that are more open to speak about it. I mean, I don't really think about it, think of it, being an ego thing when you speak about it. Like, I had a guy in a podcast yesterday, he said he was a bit embarrassed and whatnot. But I said, well, it's not embarrassment. It's easy to repair your ego. But I think, he's taken the time out of his career because he felt like mentally he wasn't in the right place. And I thought, if anything, that's an incredibly brave individual to put your hand up and to recognize that you want yourself. And he pulled himself off the rig for it. And I thought, fucking hell, fair play to you. Like, there's many, many people that wouldn't do that. Many people.
Ballsy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, that's what I thought. I thought it was, I thought it spoke testaments with the man. How do you think how do you get to these offshore lads, and how do you get them to open up without turning it, making it awkward between you?
This will sound maybe a little bit silly, and it's not a cop-out, and I genuinely mean that, but guys just come to me.
Yeah.
I think because they know the stance I am, I'm chilled out. I'm not, people know that, yeah, I'm the safety guy, but I'm Mike when I'm offshore.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I've spent so many years laboring the point to myself is when I get offshore, just be myself. And, you're right by saying what you've said, as soon as you go offshore, you live kind of two lives, which is completely fine. And you're totally right, because there's no trees when you're offshore. So essentially, your brain is having to absorb so many different things. You can't stay the same person. But one thing I try and do is I remain the person before the position when I go offshore. So it's only occasionally I put the safety hat on, in theory. So I get to live my day-to-day lives on just being me, and guys come up to me as Mike a lot of the time. They're not here to speak to the safety guy. They're here to just have a chat with me. And I think one thing I do is I listen, I engage with them. I listen to how their families are. I like hearing what they cook when they're off, what they get up to. Some of them, I know their favorite colors, what their favorite number is, what their favorite football team is, what music they like. I think you need to make it personal, and you need to make it relatable. When you go offshore, you work with people from all around the world, right? So straight away, as an individual, I can't put my beliefs towards anyone or what I think. Yeah. You've just got to be a complete open book,
100%.
Completely free of judgment. And I think that's what the guys like, is that when I ask them how they're doing, I genuinely care. I'm not there to fill in my time because I've got other stuff that I could be doing. But my priority is always the guys. If they've got a question, I'll find out the answer, or I'll get somebody to get it for me, and I'll get back to them. I never leave anything open. Everything is closed. Anything comes in, it gets put back out. And I think that's what the guys like. So if it is something work related, they know I'm going to find it out. So I think because I do so much work for them that way, they know that they feel comfortable that I'm going to be open and honest with them. They feel comfortable telling me things that they maybe not tell friends or family back home. They might not want to speak to the OIM or even the medic, but they'll come to me. And I don't know if it's just consistency. I had to build up a lot of trust with the guys. I've been on the rig for 2 years now. And I came from, that probably corporate side, and I came from the client side. I worked for Shell, I worked for Qatar Gas, which is all client focused. And then I worked for, Noble Corporation now, which is the contractor side. So there's going to be, who's this guy? Oh, he doesn't understand us. He doesn't get us. He hasn't a clue. It's taken me a lot of time to break that down, and I've had to adapt to the guys. You're never going to go get a whole rig to adapt to one person. So I need to adapt to them, which is taking a lot of work for me. But I think the guys just feel naturally drawn that they know that they can speak to me. They're not going to get judged. They're not going to get the piss taken out of them. The conversation that they have with me goes no further. And I'm genuinely just there to support them. And I think one thing that they like is I'll always check back in. Even if they're home, I'll send them a message, on a subject that maybe they discussed when they were on the rig. And I think showing that element that I'll go that extra mile for them, they're happy and comfortable. And for me, that's more about safety than reminding them what page to find a specific procedure on. That's my view.
Yeah, no, I like that. And obviously you've also had to put the work in, to build up that trust, which is difficult in itself. One, for men to realize that, maybe I can open up to this individual. And two, the fact that you've actually taken the time out to do that does speak volume of what you are trying to implement and push out there, which is why obviously you've been recognized for this. I do research on people before they come on. And I didn't even know that there was such a thing as health and safety influence, but you have been named as a top 10 health and safety influencer. And along with that, you've also picked up awards and recognition. But what does that mean more to you? The praise from the public or a quiet thank you from the individuals that you've been helping out?
There's two ways to look at that. I'll give you a bit of an understanding. So I get seen from stuff I put online, right? And some people will say, that boy loves himself. He was an arsehole. All he posts is about himself, which is fine. Because the people that have that concept don't actually know me. And I'm fine with that. That's taken me quite some time to accept because I don't like negatives towards me when I feel that I'm doing something good. But the whole point of me posting stuff online for recognition is to raise awareness on a subject. That's all I do. So like, whether it be litter picking, I'm not putting stuff out there to say, look how good my family are and look how good I am that we're litter picking. I'm subconsciously telling people not to drop litter without ever saying that. Okay?
Yeah.
So by me putting that in front of everyone, it's creating a positive perception about doing something good, but also a hidden perception of stop throwing litter. It's fucking horrible. And it's the same with mental health. I show a sense of vulnerability in an uncomfort state for me, peeling off all my plasters and telling them my struggles. That's subconsciously telling other people that it's okay to speak. It's okay to feel these things. You don't have to feel scared because I'll take the first plunge. I'll take that first step, pal. Don't worry. It's okay. So when I get the awards and praise externally or publicly, that increases my awareness to get people to understand that it's okay. So for me, the bigger subject that I'm trying to create is awareness, publicity, more people talking, more companies to do more. Look what can be done. Not look at what I'm doing, but look what can be done and you can do more. So the publicity is great for that. But best bit I get and the biggest compliment I can receive from anyone is, it's just, I didn't kill myself because of you.
Yeah. No, I can imagine.
That's fucking it.
Yeah.
And that's where it becomes personal for me because I'm speaking to you just now, which is great. But I find it very hard to speak to people and people don't understand that. They're like, but you speak to everyone, you speak all the time. That doesn't mean it's easy though.
No.
People lose that concept that because I'm physically fine and I look physically okay, they don't understand the daily challenges that I face. When I wake up, I have so much self-doubt and I hate myself and I have to build myself up the second I wake up every morning. It takes me sometimes to go in a cold shower to come out to realize I can get through things today. Because when I go in that cold shower, I go in a warm shower, get my body warm. I don't want to get out. But I've got to force myself to have a cold shower. So there's things that I need to do to myself each and every single day and to force myself to push forward to help others for this big message. But when somebody contacts me just to say that random thank you or, yeah, I saw your post today, it was absolutely brilliant. That is a personal reminder to me why I keep doing what I'm doing. And it's almost like, I call it like energy injections. Sounds a little bit silly, but when I do something good, it's draining. Like it's absolutely exhausting because it takes so much effort and strain to push through that. So if I'm on an energy deficit, well, then how do I get back up? By myself, it's so exhausting to get myself back up to that wavelength what I normally live on. But when somebody messaged me, oh, brilliant job today, really appreciate that. Boom, that's made that a little bit higher again. Thanks for taking the time to call me out of the blue and have a chat with me. It's made my day. Boom, I'm getting back up again. So like that individual parts of praise or appreciation, that's what kind of picks me back up. And the external praise, the positivity, the awards and all that, it's great. It doesn't bother me, but it's good to get the publicity to see that this is what can be done and this is what's happening. So I hope that makes a bit of sense. I'm trying to show both sides of it.
No, it definitely does. No, I'm totally with you. Like ultimately, you know, I think first things first is you are always going to get those negative boys out there, or boys and girls, and that is unfortunately human nature. It's a lot easier to be nasty than it is to be nice. I've certainly found that out, and I've grown up. I've come to realize it a lot more too. But I do think at the end of the day, whether someone looks at it from a negative point of view or from a positive point of view, I guess it's the age-old, well, some news is better than no news, or some exposure is better than no, but subliminally, you must be doing something right because you're attracting the right people as well as the arsehole, so to speak. But no, I'm totally with you. I think you're addressing something that in the industry at the moment, it's just, there's no, I always say mental health is it comes when you're offshore. So I've noticed it mainly in the oil and gas industry is the welfare system offshore could be a lot better. And if you have a lot better welfare industry offshore, you get a lot more out of the men and the women that are out there. But if you go to a place, and I spoke about this, times before, if you go to a place where the food's shite, the vessel's shite, or the rig's shite, but the crack's good, that can get you through your 2-week stint or whatever. But if you go to a place where the food's amazing, the vessel might be amazing, but the crew are absolute arseholes, well, you'd rather get off there quicker than you would off a shite place. And I think, the fact that you're standing up, you're speaking when it's a not easy place to speak, I think it shows, what kind of a guy you are. And I think it's brilliant. And why is that where the ManUP Speak Up kind of came from then?
Yeah, I mean, I actually put a post on just a couple of days ago because I'm going to be doing a talk for the IEDC soon, the Saudi Arabia chapter, which is, we talk about the health and safety, how that's came from when I started to now. It's okay, but the mental health side, for me to be able to even say that I'm doing that just shows the element how far it's came, the subject to mental health. But about 5 years ago or 6 years ago, roughly, I was in a position where I was about to take my own life. So I was about to kill myself because of what I was experiencing, the dark thoughts. And I used to go up to Tesco Dainston, which is like a mile from my house. I would get 4 cans of Strongbow, go in the stand-up sunbed, 12 minutes, neck the cans, go back in, get another 4 cans of Strongbow, and walk down beside the river. And I'd done this for months, right? This is after I had a really big anxiety attack, right? It shook me up. And then I started asking questions about mental health. That's when I started my journey in mental health. So then I spent 3 months really diving into, why did I feel certain ways as a kid? Why did I always go second last at the penalty shootouts after a game? Why did I try and stay home and have such a bad stomach when I was meant to do a talk at school? Really just asked so many questions about myself. But what I'd done is I took off so many plasters at once, I was overwhelmed. And then I couldn't control the thoughts. I basically started to spiral. And not knowing how to deal with them, I thought the best thing was just to kill myself and just make them all stop. And one night I finished my sunbed. I went and got the 4 cans of Strongbow, went down beside the river, and I knew that the water was low enough that I could jump into the river and hit my head on the rocks at the bottom and knock myself out. But I knew the water was high enough that it would take me out to sea. So I thought, brilliant, this is the day, let's do this. And I walked down the river, finished that 4th can Strongbow, and went to straddle the bar of the handrail and went to jump in. And just before I took that step in, I got a phone call, and that's what threw me off. That's what prevented me from killing myself, essentially, was a phone call, because I hadn't planned for that phone call, you know, and when you're stuck inside your own thoughts, you've got no element of logic, of reality. It doesn't exist. Yeah. You know, like, for instance, you'll hear the people that kill themselves, and then the people that don't understand mental health will start to question, how could they do that if they've got a family at home? How could they do that? Now, I had a partner at home, my ex, and I had a young son, but yet I'm a nice guy. I'm not a bad person, and I was ready to kill myself. You know, so still being here today, I've got gifted information that I've got absolutely no right knowing. And a lot of people don't know that because they killed themselves and couldn't share this experience that I've now got, that you get trapped in a way that you don't see anything. All I wanted to do that evening was kill myself. That was it. That was all that was in my head. Not, oh, I wonder if my son's going to get to sleep tonight, or I wonder what's happening tomorrow. I didn't give a fuck. I didn't care. Not by choice, because if I did, I wouldn't do that, because I'm not a bad person. But that phone call from my ex's mum, I wish it was my dad or someone, from my ex's mum, that was like somebody just grabbed me and pulled me back into reality. And I looked down and thought, holy fuck, I almost killed myself. And that was what brought me back. And it was after that moment that I thought, fuck, I need to change what I'm doing about this whole mental health thing, because what I've done for the past few months has done fuck all. So then I thought, I either leave the oil and gas industry because I struggle with mental health and I'm going to have to tackle this and I'm going to be judged, or I stay in it and do every single thing I possibly can to help those out there. So that's when I started thinking, well, how am I going to do that? You know, it's never been done before. I didn't know anything, and mental health hadn't even been spoken about back in end of 2018, beginning of 2019. It wasn't spoken about. So I was going into a territory that I had no idea what the fuck I was going to do, no idea how to do it, or, you know, what was out there. How can I research something that hasn't been fucking done? So I thought, what's the most common used phrase for people that struggle with mental health, or people that have got a view perceived of them in the oil and gas industry? Man up.
No.
And I thought, how can we just have a play on words and just totally flip on its head? You know, take something negative and pretend, oh, cheers, pal. How can we view that as a positive and take something negative into a positive? So man up and speak up. It's just a play on words. And I thought, people are going to question why I've done that. People are going to say, you can't say that. And I'm going to be like, oh, you can. Just put it in a positive light. And that's the whole drive for me. But ManUP Speak Up was founded in a way that I wanted to start a Facebook group online. So if people were in their room for that 12-hour period, they could dab into somewhere that they felt comfortable with and just speak to people. You know, say, fuck me, I had an absolute shit shift. My partner's being a cunt back at home. My kids are being little fucking arseholes. I'm struggling with X, Y, Z. And it wasn't designed in a way that I was meant to answer. It was never about that, because I'm not a mental health practitioner or a qualified whatever, right? I'm just a facilitator. That's all I am, with lived experience. So what I could do is I would just put my own opinion across. Ah, shit, sorry to hear that, pal. You know, what is it that you're feeling worse about? And then other people could chip in. Ah, I've had a shit day. Well, this is what I done. And then before you know it, you've got people all over the world in our industry speaking, feeling comfortable, getting shit off their fucking heads, feeling better, not stuck in their room, wishing their life away for 12 hours at a time. So that's where ManUP Speak Up generated from. Since then, I'll be perfectly honest, it fucking went through the roof to begin with, because it was like that new thing on the block. People wanted to try it and people wanted to speak. Yeah. And it was great. But I'm realistic that it's not sustainable as somebody to do that as a hobby because they enjoy it. I'm aware of the emotional energy it takes. the groups there still exist. People still speak to each other. But for me, it's more of a movement to get people speaking. A movement to, you can speak to people on there, but if you want to, I can signpost you for professional aid, professional help. That's where it comes from. I'm a mental health first aider there. That doesn't mean I'm a counsellor. That just means I've got a limited, qualified amount of knowledge that can get you to where you need to go. That's all that means. And ManUP SpeakUp was that. That's why it was designed, to get people talking to begin with, but it's never as a solution. Always okay, we've got you now. You're speaking up, brilliant. Have you tried this? Do you want to try that? And that's all it was. So the group's there, but now I use the origination of the ManUP SpeakUp movement to do public talks for, corporate companies, community groups, schools, like Brownies or whoever wants to listen or wants me to speak. I will speak. I do absolutely everything for free. I've been doing talks for 5 years now, and all I ask when it comes to the corporate companies is I'll do a talk if they agree to a litter pick. I've got all the litter picking gear at my house. All they need to agree is to do the litter pick, and I'll do the talk, no problem. Because a lot of the things I cover in the talk, them saying thank you isn't enough. I don't want to thank you. I'm not going to go to an office to be told thank you. I'm there to get the staff engaged with each other. So I don't care if it's the fucking CEO of a company, the managing director, the technician, the cleaner. Get out the fucking office, leave your position behind you, and start engaging as a person. Doing litter picking is one of the most lowest probably tasks you can do in life, right? Picking up other people's rubbish. That's how people view it.
Yeah.
For me, I view it as an opportunity to bring people together, to do something good, to get them actively outdoors in the fresh air, to get them mingling with people they don't normally mingle with, but get everybody on a base level that you can talk about fucking anything. Nothing about work or any of that shit. Get outside, know your staff, and engage with them, doing something beneficial. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how the conversation really goes. It might go really good, but you're going to be doing something positive for the environment. And that's how it will be remembered. Do you know? So that's when I say to companies, at the weekend, I had Briggs & Masco, a roofing company. They had a family day, which was the agreement. I'll do a talk for you guys. If your company does a litter pick, they just performed a litter pick at the weekend. So they're fulfilling their end of the bargain. I love that. Yeah. That is ace. So that's kind of how I use the whole, the originated setup for ManUP SpeakUp to kind of where it's grown from now. So it's a win-win. You're helping the environment, but you're also helping people as well, which is pretty cool, right?
Yeah. Where did the litter picking come from though? What got you into that anyway?
Okay. So that area that I tried to kill myself was a known dumping ground. Okay. So it was one of the worst dumping grounds in Aberdeen. That's why I went down there, because I knew no one would come and look down there. And one day I'd left my house, because when I used to walk past the steps down to the river, I would cross the road and go across because I was like, I don't want to look. It was too raw. But I thought, if I'm telling people to speak up and face their fears, I need to go and do that myself. I need to practice what I preach. And I took 3 black bags, walked down to that area and started cleaning it up, because I thought, maybe if I cleanse the area, I'll feel better. There won't be that black cloud. But this guy stopped me, a guy called Massimo De Bella, and he says, "Hey, what are you doing? Do you want a hand?" And of course, I've got social anxiety, so I just pretended he wasn't there.
Oh no!
And I was like, "Nah, fuck this! Like, don't speak to me. I don't know who you are." So I just totally blanked him.
Stranger danger! Stranger danger!
I was like, "Hello," and I'm like, "Fuck off!" And then I thought, "Nah, can I speak to him?" I was like, "Oh, hi, didn't see you there." Bullshit. And I was like, he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just picking up litter." And he's like, "Do you want a hand?" And I was like, every ounce of me wanted to say no, but I thought, fuck it. Like, okay, so yeah. So cut a long story short, me and him picked up litter for the next 2 hours, But the conversations we had, Joe, these were like just not natural conversations. It was just so effortless, talking about things that I maybe never spoke to people about before. And I don't know why. I don't know if it was because I didn't know them or because I was litter picking. I have no idea why. But I thought to myself, like, everybody should be doing it. Not just litter picking and clean up the environment, but everybody should be able to experience this. So we finished picking up litter for like 2 and a bit hours, finished these 3 black bags, and I said to him, mate, I'm going to start a group. I'm going to start a litter picking group, and it's going to go viral. And he just laughed at me, and I'm like, no, fuck me, honestly. I've done it with this group, ManUP Speak Up. I'm going to do it with this litter picking group. So like 2:30 in the morning, I came up with the name Community Cleanup, designed the logo that was similar to ManUP Speak Up, put it out there in the big wide world, and then thought, fuck it, I'm going to do a litter picking event this weekend. So this was on the Wednesday. The litter picking weekend was on the Saturday. And 4 people joined. So I put it all over Facebook and LinkedIn, like, come on, I'm going to do a litter pick. Everyone needs to join me. 4 people joined me. We cleaned up 300 kilograms of litter on the first day. I'd done the same event the next weekend, but because community cleanup got so much coverage, I was running a litter pick in Vietnam, in Ghana, and Aberdeen at the same time, which was fucking ace. That second weekend, 10 people showed up. We cleaned up 500 kilograms of litter. I ran an event every Saturday for months, right? In the same area. We removed over 13,000 kilograms of litter from that riverside. 2,500 kilograms of metal from the river. It brought otters to swim upstream for the first time in 40 years. We redesigned the whole layout of that riverside to a nature trail, a fairy village. We created a viewing platform so people could come down and actually enjoy the view. We done seasonal events there, Christmas, Halloween, Easter, fucking Remembrance Sunday. We brought the whole community together just through litter, right? And what I pride myself in is taking something so negative and using that energy and turning it into something positive. And I'm quite happy to say I didn't do any of that shit myself. I can't build some of the stuff that the guy's done down there. I couldn't have the creative knowledge to build a fucking fairy garden. But what I did do is bring the people that could do it together. And that's when I look at, if you really want to do something in life, right? Whoever it is, you need them to understand what their why is. If you can get somebody to understand their why and tap into that energy, it is completely endless. And what lies ahead of them is whatever they want in life. Because when you understand your why, you don't stop. Nothing stops you. No opinion, no roadblock, nothing. You will find a way around it. And that's why, since I'm still here, living and breathing, my why is to raise as much awareness on mental health and do as much as I can with the environment, that I can't slow down. I can't be pushed back now, because that's why I'm here. That's my second lease of life. That is my why. So yeah, a little bit off tangent there, but that's where the litter picking came from, is basically cleansed me from everything I had kind of lingering over my head. And it brought so many people together for the right reasons. And that's why I'll always continue to do it wherever I am in the world.
No, I love that. I love that, especially considering, you come from the industry, which obviously quite a lot of the litters probably stem from, unfortunately. But it just shows you that, just because you're in that industry, it doesn't mean you live by the exact, that you're anti-environment and all this, nonsense. But I've taken a lot from listening to this conversation, as I'm sure listeners will too. But this won't be the last time I have you on, and I know obviously you're jet setting off offshore soon. But one thing I ask everyone that comes on is, it's the same question, even if it's hard to ask, is if you had your time again and you knew what you do now, would you have still gone down the same path or taken a totally different route?
Same path every single time.
Yeah.
I'm not a religious guy, and I don't have very many beliefs in life other than you're meant to be where you're meant to be. And I always believe in stay consistent, stay true to yourself, and trust the process. That's what I believe in. Anything other than that, could you have done this better? Do you regret not playing professional football? Absolutely not. I've taken a little bit of everything that I've been in life and my journey with me. And it's just a case of sharpening my tools along the way. I've got absolutely no idea what the future is going to bring. I'll get knocked down. I'll maybe be worse off at points, but I always feel that if you're in a situation, you do not lose in life, you only learn. But that is a choice. And that's one thing that keeps me going, is you'll get loads of choices. You can view it as something negative or positive. Sometimes in life, the negatives seem almost impossible to find. But that doesn't mean they're not there. You just need to work harder to find them.
Oh, I like that. That's a good way to close it out, Mike. Yeah, that's a good way to close it out. And thanks so much for coming on. Like I said, I don't think it'll be the last time you'll be on. I'll be definitely pushing you again in future.
No, again, just appreciate everything you're doing. I think people like yourself, you may not be able to understand the value that you carry, but being able to provide that platform and bringing people in, myself and everybody else out there, I'm going to speak on everybody else now and the ones you have in the future. Thank you for all you're doing. It's not easy what you're actually doing. And I think it takes a really special person to be able to do that, like yourself. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for everything you do for myself and everybody else. Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Mike. I really appreciate that. I just feel there's a world out there that's hidden behind the curtain, and I just want to pull that curtain back. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Like I say, I will have you on again, and thanks so much for coming on, Mike.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
If there's anything I'll take from that episode, is that there is people in the industry that are really trying to change the way it has been for years. And Mike is a classic example of someone who is trying to get the mental health aspect and subject spoken more and more about. I just want to say, if you're still listening, thank you so much for all the support I've had on this show. That's me on my 8th episode now, with plenty more lined up. But I just want to say a huge thank you to all the listeners. It's been overwhelming, as I have said on my posts in the past. But I'm just asking for one favour. If there's any chance, if you get the chance, please do like, subscribe and share this podcast with your mates and family and anyone who might be keen to hear it. It really will help the show, and it helps me find more guests too. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you for our next episode where we go again.